How do you find somebody who's interested in mushrooms? Are they like weirdo people?
Yeah.
Like, how would you know that they actually like mushrooms?
Yeah, we see a lot of weirdos or unorthodox people being
Yeah.
attracted to mushroom industry. I mean, mushrooms generally are pretty weird. We don't really see them so much in the supermarkets because of the whole shipping and logistic problem, right? It's the cold chain logistics is a complex issue. With the short shelf life of mushrooms, it's quite difficult to make them accessible because real estate is so expensive over here. We are only going to set aside 1% of our lands for farming. So with such a small country and you're only taking a small fraction of land to do farming, we've come to terms that we will never be able to produce enough food to feed our whole country. And we are very heavily reliant on imports. At present, Singapore imports over 90% of food. So I think with parameters such as size of the country and land scarcity, high labor costs, high energy costs, farming is incredibly difficult to do in Singapore. Couple that with very picky Singaporeans and low consumption demand for local produce, yeah, it becomes very tricky for you to navigate how exactly to solve this issue or how exactly to survive in this industry. When it comes to farming, not something AI can replace, right? There's still a very hands-on, laborious aspect of it. Entering the farming industry as a very young farmer in a time where the industry is not doing so well, I think that's one of the bravest things I've done recently. It's not an easy journey.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, serial founder, Harvard MBA, science fiction nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Every week, we debate startup news, interview changemakers, answer listener questions, and share personal insights. Join our movement of over 40,000 members and get transcripts, resources, and community at www.bravesea.com. Stay well and stay brave.
Hey, so excited to have you on the show. You're building Fogo Fungi, which is, I guess you're a fun guy. I'm sorry, that pun there. But you're a founder who is building in the mushroom space. And so I think a great intersection of agriculture, entrepreneurship, and leadership in Singapore and Southeast Asia. Could you introduce yourself?
Very nice to meet you, Jeremy. I'm Ryan Ong, founder of Fogo Fungi. And we are Singapore indoor mushroom farm growing a wide variety of gourmet mushrooms for chefs, hotels, restaurants, and general consumers.
So what are the kind of mushrooms that you do?
Yeah, we do over 9 varieties right now. We kind of rotate between different varieties depending on the season and market demand. But quick favorites of mine that we grow right now, lion's mane mushroom, the Pio mushrooms, and a bunch of different oyster mushrooms in colors that you probably didn't know about. Blue oyster, pink oyster, golden oyster, and they're edible.
What? I gotta come by and treat myself to some of those. I didn't even know you could have blue or golden oyster mushrooms. I mean, the ones in the supermarket, we call it cream colored or normal colored. I don't know.
Usually cream, gray, or brown colored mushrooms in the supermarkets. Well, we grow exotic varieties. There's no genetic modification or artificial coloring. They're just tens and thousands of edible species of fungi and mushrooms. But we don't really see them so much in the supermarkets because of the whole shipping and logistic problem, right? It's the cold chain logistics is a complex issue. And it's with the short shelf life of mushrooms, it's quite difficult to make them accessible in supermarkets. So yeah, farms like ourselves growing locally gives consumers greater access to more interesting colors and flavors of mushrooms.
Okay, I mean, there's so much to go. I've got to go back in time, but quickly, is there any taste difference or is it just a color difference?
They do taste different and they have different textures, medicinal benefits as well. So for example, the pink oyster mushroom, which is a fan favorite, it actually tastes like bacon and turkey ham.
What?
Yeah.
Now you're making me wish I could eat this now and make this into a cooking show, I guess. But so much to unpack here. So I think we'll pin that, but I want to go all the way back to the beginning because I understand that you were a student at the Singapore Management University studying business. So all the way back then, what were you thinking? Did you think you were going to become a banker or something? What were you thinking?
Yeah, I was a student back in SMU. The finance industry never really appealed to me.
Yeah.
I think back in university, for me, it was a carefree life. I wasn't thinking too much about the future.
Right.
More of just living the moment as the last phase of education. I was very interested in entrepreneurship since I was little.
Yeah.
So I knew that I would get involved with building my own business one way or another.
Yeah. So were you doing on top of, let's say, clubbing or partying, I guess, which I did a lot of back in undergrad, but were you doing incubators or accelerators?
Not too much of these incubators or competitions. I think apart from random nights of ideation with friends, I wasn't really too serious into it. I think I was only really exposed to the business world after I graduated.
So yeah, so what were you thinking? What kind of job were you thinking you were going to get upon graduation? Because everybody who's graduating is always like, okay, either I join a big corporate, some people want to be founders, but how were you thinking about that?
Funny enough, I only started thinking about it towards the end of graduation. That's when I looked around me and realized that all my peers were applying for jobs. And yeah, realization hit that I haven't really been thinking about my career too much. So I still remember sitting in school, opening up some kind of job portal and thinking which industry would appeal to me to build a career in. I remember looking at the marketing industry because that's what I majored in university. But eventually I decided to settle with helping out my family's business, the hospitality industry, because at least that is kind of some exposure to entrepreneurship and running a business.
People always have a kind of a love-hate relationship about the family as a business. But did you want to do it, or were you excited to do it?
Yeah, family businesses are very complex. Well, I had a really good time over there. It's my dad's business, so it was fantastic to be able to shadow him. And with family business, there comes a lot of pros as well. It's an instant connection of trust at the foundational level, and that helps a lot when you're shadowing and trying to learn the ropes of the business. So for me, I really enjoyed my time in the business. It was about 3 years there.
Yeah. What's interesting is that you had a good time with family business, etc. But instead of serving people, you want to serve mushrooms, right? So how does that? How do you start to realize I don't want it to be the hospitality business, which is, I mean, people think it's quite nice, right? In my head, it'd be like, oh, I got to go for a holiday. I get to check out different hotels. Travel is part of it. Instagram is good if you're in the hospitality business. To mushrooms, right? In the darkness. So how did that journey happen?
The transition is shocking to most people, right?
Yeah.
Well, first, I would say that the hospitality industry that I'm in, it's probably a little bit different to what you imagine or what most people would imagine. We operate in the budget sector of hospitality industry. So I think not too much of crazy traveling, nice social media, Instagram. On top of that, when I joined the industry, that was 2019 when I graduated from SMU. So the pandemic just hit.
Oh boy, yeah.
And hospitality accommodation industry, it's largely dependent on tourists.
Yeah.
So in COVID, the first two industries that took the biggest hit was the aviation industry and then naturally the hospitality industry. Fortunately for us, the business pivoted a little bit and we went on into helping a very niche and unique group in Singapore. We did quarantine facilities. We were helping the nation battle its fight against COVID.
Right.
And yeah, so a lot of interesting journey there. You can dive more into it if you're interested. But sometime in 2022, that's when I stumbled upon a YouTube video by accident. I wasn't even intentionally searching for any sort of video, but it popped up in the suggested video bar. And it was about mushrooms.
Yeah.
Immediately caught my eye.
Yeah.
I became incredibly fascinated with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was a time post-pandemic, right? Singapore was talking a lot about the importance of local food security. So I just connected one and one together and decided that, hey, it's my time to start building my own business.
Yeah.
Graduated from SMU, already worked a little bit. Young guy, I think he's 26 years old at that point in time. I thought I knew everything. So foolish enough to venture into my own startup.
But let's unpack that, right? When you saw the mushroom video, was it, okay, you started doing it, you started being a farmer, and then eventually you were like, oh, I can make this a mushroom farm? Or were you like, you saw the mushroom, you clicked on it, and very quickly you were like, wait, this could be a thing. I'm just kind of curious. Yeah.
The mindset was, I think everything was not very clear at the start, but what was clear to me was that I really liked the mushrooms at that point in time, and I saw a business opportunity. My mindset was the government was talking a lot about it. They were giving out grants also to support this industry. So in my mind, as a 26-year-old, if the government is signaling a push towards this industry, just how we're seeing a lot of push towards AI right now, there must be a future for this industry. So I didn't have a clear business plan, but all I knew was it will probably work out. So just decided to dive into that.
And so let's talk a little bit about that here, which is that you're making a set of decisions around experimenting with mushrooms. And you like the video, but there's a big difference between liking a video and actually doing it, right? I mean, for me, I like bicycling, and so I watch cycling videos. But of course, my actual cycling is probably an urban cycle, a Brompton bike, not a 100-kilometer or 200 or 500-kilometer cycle, right? So tell me more about that. Did you order mushroom kits? What was the first experiments like?
Yeah. Well, I would say, first of all, my fascination with fungi was not just I liked it, but I think I was incredibly engrossed in it. So I ended up not just watching one video, but a couple of videos, going a whole rabbit hole of research on the internet. And I shared the idea with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
And she decided to buy me one of these mushroom grow kits that she got on Shopee or overseas.
Yeah.
So that was my first experience with growing mushrooms. The kit came shortly after she bought it. And I was just misting it, activating the kit. And when the first harvest of mushrooms grow, just my love and passion for fungi just fell deeper and deeper.
Wait, so what kind of species was it?
It was a pink oyster mushroom grow kit that she got me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you, I guess you get to eat it, I guess?
Yeah. And then I cooked it. And this is the mushroom that I said, yeah, it exactly tasted like bacon for me.
What? Okay, I need to try this now for sure. But I think what's interesting, so you started doing it, and there's an interesting piece because you started researching a lot about it. What, the history, the biology? What were you researching about these mushrooms?
Yeah, I was researching, I think one part of it was all things fungi, just how mushrooms grew, the different species of mushrooms, especially on the culinary qualities.
Yeah.
And then the other part also was I was searching a lot on the business aspect of it. This was a time before ChatGPT was a big thing. So a lot of the research was done on Google, on YouTube. Lots of useful information over there. There are people in forums posting all the time about how let's set up a commercial operation, make it from a hobby into a business. So most of my times were circled around that, really focusing on how do I grow them well and how do I make a business out of it.
Right. And I'm just curious, which is, are there any misconceptions that people have about, I guess, the mushrooms? Any fun facts about mushrooms?
Yeah. I think number one misconception would be mushrooms grow in the dark. That may be true for button mushrooms, but the species of mushrooms that we grow and a lot of variety of mushrooms, they do need some kind of light source.
Oh,
and that helps them to develop their colors, also guides them in the direction to grow. Without light, they'll grow all haywire, not knowing which direction to grow into. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, I would have said that, literally 5 minutes ago. That was my misconception, that mushrooms don't need any light. So let's talk about the business, right? Because I think there's a difference between a grow kit that you have at home, which you can buy on Shopee or Lazada, versus making it a whole farm, right? So what's the difference between scaling it up? I assume you need more space, or what do you need?
Yeah, it's not so different from any other business, actually. Definitely, you need a bigger farm for scale. With scale, you can enjoy economies of scale and bring down your cost per unit. On top of that, you have to manage a lot of stuff that I knew I had to do, but would rather not do because I was very focused on enjoying the process of growing mushrooms, right? But with a larger scale business, when you move it from a hobby to a business, you have to start thinking about business insurance, rental, utilities, the capex and equipment that you have to buy. So yeah, I think with any business, it's very important to understand your top line, bottom line, how you're going to make a ton of profit based on your investment.
So what does a farm look like in the context of a mushroom farm, and what does it look like in the context of Singapore?
For us, we grow our mushrooms indoor and we do everything from start to end. In our farm, we will have a lab. That's where we have a very clean and sterile environment where we culture the roots of the mushroom, mycelium. And from there, we transfer the mycelium onto either grain or a substrate, which is a food source for the mushroom to continue its life cycle. So that's what we call the incubation area where we grow, where substrate is just sitting on racks and racks of shelf, consuming its food source before it's ready to grow. Once it's ready to grow, we move it on to a fruiting area in the farm. And that's where we have lower temperatures, higher humidity, light source. The mushrooms grow up really rapidly from there. We harvest, pack it, send it out to restaurants. So that's what the typical indoor mushroom farm looks like. It's very clean, totally unlike traditional farming. No hot sun at all. We work in a very cool, air-conditioned environment, but there's still a hard work aspect to it.
Yeah. How does it differ from a lot of the farms in Singapore?
Well, there's still a lot of different farms in Singapore. I mean, first off, we have the traditional farms that have been here for a longer period of time. Those are typically in greenhouse. They're outdoors with less controlled conditions. That's the one probably that would appeal to a lot of Singaporeans as a farm.
Yeah.
Life as what you see
Yeah.
online. And then there are a lot of modern farms that have been popping up in recent years and also closing down in recent years.
Yeah.
These are indoor farms with the environment tightly controlled. For vegetables, it could be a light source, humidity, temperature as well. I think for our farm, we sit somewhere in the middle of both of this. I wouldn't say we are the most high-tech, crazy and innovative farm. but at the same time, we are not very traditional. And I think this plays in a sweet spot.
So you mentioned two things, right? One is you're on a sweet spot. The other one is that you said a lot of the modern farms have been set up, but a lot of them have shut down. So let's talk about what went wrong for a lot of these modern farms. What's the dynamic here? Is it space? Is it rent? Is it energy? Is it water? I mean, these are things that I've been reading online, but I'm just curious about that. Yeah.
I think everyone would have seen by now online that the common killers for the farming industry or modern farming industry would be the utilities are really high, rentals crazy, labor costs. It's so hard for you to manage. And at the end of the day, you're producing just a crop, right? It's a commodity that people consume on a day-to-day basis. So broadly in the mushroom industry, there are two major categories. One is your button mushroom. And what we are operating in is in the gourmet mushroom industry. So very different. Basically, button mushroom refers to your portobellos, white button, brown button, cremini, and Swiss browns.
Oh, yeah. We use them all the time. Yeah.
A fun fact, they're all actually the same species of mushrooms. They're all agaricus. They're just in different life stages.
I know that brown and white are the same mushroom, but portobello is also...
It's just a larger version of the mushroom.
No! That is new to me.
So that's why the gourmet mushroom category, which by definition refers to everything else, every other mushroom outside of the mushroom category.
It'll be one...
Your enoki, your shimejis, shiitake, and nowadays more exciting and trendy varieties would be the lion's mane.
Of course. And so how do you go about, because gourmet mushroom, it sounds it's almost oxymoronic, because most people think of mushrooms as a cheap thing.
Yeah. Largely right now we're selling a lot to 5-star hotels, Michelin restaurants. Supermarkets is something that we are really excited about, probably trying to enter that market sometime this year. But yeah, there's also a reason why we sell to 5-star hotels and Michelin restaurants, right? They're like a perfect target audience for us because first off, they have a high appreciation for quality produce. And the other reason, naturally, at this stage is because they're the only ones who can afford a high price.
Right. How was the price difference? Could you give me... How would you think about it?
The mushrooms, it wholesales for about $30 to $50 per kilogram.
Yeah.
So it's comparable to your lobsters and steaks right now. So pretty high. The idea is, as we push to enter the supermarkets, $30 to $50 per kilogram is not really a price we believe Singaporeans can accept.
Yeah.
So with that, we have a whole plan of building a larger farm, bringing the price down and making more varieties available for the everyday consumers.
What do you think is the right price point, you think, for the mainstream consumer?
Yeah, I always enjoy speaking to people to find out what is the price that they want to pay. From what I think, it would be pegged very closely to the price of imports. So the button mushrooms that you see, or the shiitake mushrooms that you see in the supermarkets, the price would likely be really close to that. So it's about $15 per kilogram. I think because we try to differentiate ourselves by growing locally, offering a higher quality and freshness and nutritional profile, flavor profile compared to the imports, I believe Singaporeans would be willing to pay up to 30% premium on these imported things. But no more than that. We've seen in recent years how sensitive consumers are and no strong push or demand towards local produce consumption. So I think the price factor is something that farms and businesses have to really navigate closely. Singaporeans are just so price sensitive.
But when you talk about imported lion's mane mushrooms and all these other gourmet mushrooms, where are they coming from?
So most mushrooms come from either Malaysia and then or China. China's a big one. They're responsible for more than, I think, 95 or 90% of the world's production of mushrooms. And Singapore being so close to China, it allows for the cold chain logistics actually pretty strong over there, the bridge from China to Singapore. But the issue lies in the shelf life because mushrooms, your button mushrooms, is Swiss brown, portobello, white button that we were talking about earlier. They have a long shelf life, typically between 30 days to 60 days. So they can withstand long shipping times. But gourmet mushrooms, they are more perishable. Oftentimes their shelf life averages out at about 1 week.
Oh, that's pretty short. And how long does a cold chain take?
Depends if it's by air or sea, but it would be on average 2 or 3 days.
By air.
So if you factor in just the shipping time, as well as giving the supermarkets time to repack or display on the shelf, and then for a time for consumers to purchase it and then keep it in their fridge at home. Yeah, gourmet mushrooms, too much of the shelf life has been consumed or taken up during the shipping process.
Right.
So the only way that we think we can solve this issue is to produce it locally, serve directly to the supermarkets and restaurants, and then we cut out the whole logistic issue and give consumers as close to day zero shelf life as possible. On that point, it's actually another, end of the day, we're not just farmers, right? We also try to create higher value added products. So talking about medicinal properties, gourmet mushrooms are raved about for their medicinal properties in today's world, and creating supplements out of the mushrooms we grow is something we believe there's a huge market for. Because when people take supplements, I think consumers are also becoming very educated in the choices they make when it comes to buying. They care about where the source is, how clean or how potent the product is. So if we are growing the mushrooms ourselves and making it into, let's say, a lion's mane extract, lion's mane supplement, that's as pure as it gets, right? It's right from the farm source. We're bottling it and turning it into these little pills or things.
You're reminding me of all those China farm tours I used to take, or even the US as well, where you visit a whiskey distillery, watch it being done, and then at the end they give you a tasting bar.
With the big farm that we're building right now, the piece of land in Sungai Tengah, which the Singapore Food Agency has awarded us, as part of that farm, we definitely want to do a kind of experience like that as well.
Yeah.
And from that, consumers develop a stronger understanding of freshness and local production, and better appreciation and whatnot. And that would encourage consumption, because I think that's what is lacking in Singapore's farming industry right now.
Let's talk about it, because one thing that Singapore has been focused on is food security, right? And I think it makes sense. Every country in the world wants to be food secure in case they run out of food or they can't.
Yeah. I think the one that's most right in everyone's faces is the pure size of our country, right? We're such a small country. And the government has decided that, hey, only because real estate is so expensive over here, we are only going to set aside 1% of our lands for farm. So with such a small country and you're only taking a small fraction of land to do farming, we've come to terms that we will never be able to produce enough food to feed our whole country. And we are very heavily reliant on imports. At present, Singapore imports over 90% of food. So I think with parameters such as size of the country and land scarcity, high labor costs, high energy costs, farming is incredibly difficult to do in Singapore. Couple that with very picky Singaporeans and low consumption demand for local produce, it becomes very tricky for you to navigate how exactly to solve this issue or how exactly to survive in this industry. I believe that at the end of the day, Singaporeans are becoming more educated. As long as you can consistently grow high quality produce, be it vegetables, mushrooms, eggs, at good prices, demand will naturally follow. And maybe that's the reason why we haven't seen that in Singapore so far. Maybe people are talking a lot about the high cost and what, right? But I feel personally, we haven't really seen a fantastic produce, a crop that's locally grown, when we're talking about vegetables and mushrooms at a good price. The eggs have done a fantastic job at this. If you look at it, many Singaporeans love consuming locally produced eggs.
Interesting. Could you talk about the egg industry? Why is it such a role model?
Yeah, I mean, personally for my family, eggs is always something that we had scarce in the past, right? Like some salmonella or the eggs not being clean, not being fresh. So over the years, people have realized that, hey, we have really fantastic chicken farms over here, egg farms. And the eggs actually taste really good, really high quality. And when you buy it, there's a guaranteed freshness. Sure, it's slightly more expensive than imports. But with egg being such a staple in at least my family's diet, it's a no-brainer for us to purchase locally produced eggs.
Yeah.
So I think many Singaporeans also share this similar challenges and issues and a similar mindset. So we'll see that how it translates. The egg farms have really led the way.
Yeah.
I think it's more of how the other farms can follow that same model.
Yeah, and I'll say, I mean, frankly, I don't really buy local eggs. Maybe I should look into it. But you're right to say that the price differential is actually quite small. Maybe also about 10, 20, 30% as well. It's not a huge price difference versus the imported eggs from my perspective as well. Wouldn't the simplistic answer just be, okay, solve Singapore's food security, take 1% of land, you build 100 floors, like vertical farm, right? And then you just pump in all the energy and water that's needed to make it happen.
That's what was theorized, right? And how the whole vertical farming industry was born. They figured that to solve the world's food problem, we would have to just grow higher and higher, put in energy, and at the end of the day turn out some crop of food for the people. But as it turns out, at this point in time, the infrastructural cost to build a very tall building is still way higher compared to having what we call farming in a large land, maybe in Malaysia and China.
Yeah, exactly.
We go horizontally instead of vertically.
Right.
As it turns out, it's just still way cheaper to go wider. When you start to build this, you not only have to factor in the building cost, but now you have no access to sunlight.
Yeah.
And you have to pump the water upwards. You start controlling temperatures in a vertical farm. So that's when input costs are very high, contributing to your variable costs. And at the end of the day, the cost per kilogram of, let's say, a vegetable, it becomes too expensive for the consumer to accept. I don't think just because it hasn't worked in the past that it's doomed. We've seen a lot of farms raise huge money and close down, but there are lessons to be learned from that. I think as technology improves, more innovators enter the industry, they'll figure out a way, learn from the predecessors, and figure out a way that would make sense.
If you had a magic wand to build the vertical farm or whatever that farm is, what would that magical farm look like from your perspective? Because you're already growing mushrooms, everything. What would that look like?
Yeah, I think especially with mushrooms, it's very interesting. Instead of going high, we go low. So maybe in the basement of buildings, unused car park spaces.
Oh, interesting.
I think that's where farms can exist because you don't have to invest in building brand new infrastructure, but rather utilizing unused spaces to produce food. I don't think it's possible for Singapore to be 100% agriculture. If I had a magic wand, I think that it would be, with a little flick of the wand, it would be beautiful to see a small number of farms in Singapore, but producing very high quality and very reasonable price crops. And also with consumer base that shows strong appreciation and support for these local produce. Because if you look at countries like Italy, Australia, or other places in Europe, you see the citizens and consumers of those areas, they really have a strong appreciation for local food. And sometimes it's more expensive, sometimes it's not. But at the end of the day, they really care about the source and where it comes from. Because undeniably, it is fresher being grown from your local farmers. It's not in transportation, it's not doused in pesticides or chemicals. I think that's what's still really lacking in Singapore. And I think it will be a very beautiful Singapore to live in, right? Where we have like great, healthy, delicious produce and a strong consumer base that appreciates that. Yeah, the new consumption trend is that people care about where their food comes from, how it's produced. So I think that kind of storytelling not only helps the organization that's pushing their product out, but it also helps appeal to the consumers that are consuming it.
Awesome. And I'm just kind of curious, could you share a personal story about a time that you have been brave?
I think entering the farming industry as a very young farmer in a time where the industry is not doing so well, I think that's one of the bravest things I've done recently. It's not an easy journey, especially for your first business venture, right? There's a lot of stuff to learn, figure out. But I think the journey has been made a lot easier also for the wonderful support that I've received from family, friends, and industry experts. And I think that's the best way to learn. If you're going to do something brave, there's going to be fear there for sure. Just surround yourself with the right people who are willing to help you and groom you. And emerge stronger from this.
Was your family, your friends, your girlfriend, were they all supportive of this idea to do mushrooms or in farming, or were they cautious and worried? I'm just kind of curious.
Definitely some element of caution, but incredibly supportive. I couldn't ask for better support. In the early days, friends would purchase stuff from me, help repost on social media, spread the word. The girlfriend and mom, helping out with taking care of just the basic needs, like cooking 3 meals a day. I don't have to worry about food so much, and I can focus on the business. So, and a bunch of family and friend members who lent me money because we're bootstrap, right? So one way or another, we had to secure funds, and a lot of us helped us.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, because there's something that's so scary for people, right? Which is like that idea of like doing it yourself. How did you get better at doing it yourself? Did you is it all YouTube? How did you get experience to finally become a farmer?
Yeah. So at the very start, I was just growing in my bedroom, right? Essentially no cost. Making use of every corner of the house that I can find. And then I realized that I needed to get a bigger farm naturally, but also I lacked the experience in this industry. So what I did was I went around knocking on doors, finding people who would take me under their wing and show me more experience. It could be at that point in time, was like any farming. I just wanted to learn something, right? To learn about the farming industry. So I ended up volunteering in a vegetable farm and also working in an insect farming startup. So that's where I really started making new connections and getting necessary industry experience, widening my horizons about the agritech industry. Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, that's one of the best decisions I made, right?
Yeah.
But I think at that point in time, I decided to gain experience for 2 reasons. One was that I totally lack knowledge and experience within this industry that I wanted to get into. And secondly, I was a little bit afraid to commit to a huge rental or huge facility into an industry that I didn't understand so well about. So it was kind of like a no-brainer for me to work, volunteer, and learn somewhere else where I can still be taking income and at the same time learning more skills from what I needed. So that 1 year that I spent volunteering and working elsewhere, it became a very incredible foundation for the business that I've built today.
What were some lessons that you learned from watching these peers and other folks go about doing it? What were some lessons you took away from that?
Yeah, I think one takeaway was the people management aspect of it, because both places where I worked, I noticed that when it comes to farming, not something AI can replace, right? There's still a very hands-on, laborious aspect of it. And to keep people with the company and good people with the company for a long time, people management is very important. You have to ensure that the people continuously grow with their role. They're happy with what they're doing and they get paid well, so that you don't have to focus so much on an additional problem, right? Because there's already so much problem on its own with growing the crop. So that was probably the biggest takeaway. People management is important for it.
I guess there's a problem. What's the solution to it? Is it like, I don't know, pay better? Is it manage better? Is it lead better? How do you solve that? I'm sure every farm in the world has that question in their head.
I think everyone has a different take on it. For me, I think it starts with the culture of the company. It could be from the little things of how you, down to the employment contract, right? How what is provided when it comes to like salary and benefits of the company, all the way to outside of the contract, like a day-to-day or weekly interaction, how we approach and tackle problems. Is it like a top-down hierarchy where we're telling them, just listen to me? In my company, we try to preach a very open culture, non-hierarchical. We encourage everyone to make mistakes. Just try not to make the same mistake twice. And everyone sits together to contribute different aspects. Everyone shares about what they do in their own role. And for us, so far, it's working. Creates a very open communication between everyone and a better appreciation.
So I was just imagining hiring somebody. Everybody wants to do banking at Singapore Management University. So I'm sure if you said, hey, I want to do a banking startup, you can have lots of people apply for your job.
Yeah.
And we say, why do you want to do banking? And they're going to say something like, oh, I've been passionate about banking. I do case studies for banking. But for mushrooms, what do you say? Do you say, how do you find somebody who's interested in mushrooms? Are they like weirdo people?
Yeah.
Like, oh, how would you know that they actually like mushrooms? Or what's their motivation from your perspective?
Yeah, we see a lot of weirdos or unorthodox people being attracted to the mushroom industry. I mean, mushrooms generally are pretty weird. We do see a lot of bankers and people who have worked in the corporate job, fantastic resume, fantastic skill set, knocking on doors and saying that they want to either volunteer or work.
Yeah.
I think because in a stressful society, farming is seen kind of as like a therapeutic and easy, right?
Yeah.
But when I speak with these people, I always warn them that it's maybe not as therapeutic as a farm life in Australia. It's in Singapore, it's very intense. The farming industry is still very, very difficult. Lots of hard work that's required. I think the right way to attract talent into this industry would be having a nice balance of that, There's still a nice balance of farming being novel, more relaxing. And then we have to balance that with kind of being a stable income with prospects for job progression. These are the two things that we have to manage in order to attract good talents into the industry. I think when we're looking for people, especially in Singapore, to join our company, we have to be realistic. We know that there's not going to be someone who is skilled or experienced in mushroom farming, understands mushrooms really well. So that's kind of like out of the door. What we hire for is more for attitude and seeing how they solve certain issues and get out of tight situations. Because with our industry, the waters are changing, tide's changing all the time. And random issues pop up here and there that you have to troubleshoot. So we try to hire for someone who is willing to learn. We teach you everything that you need to know about mushrooms. We love talking about mushrooms. And then willing to kind of ride the wave with us, stick together as a team, cover each other's weaknesses. Yeah.
Great. On that note, I'd love to summarize the 3 big takeaways I got from this conversation.
All right.
First of all, thanks so much for sharing about, I think, your early career and discovery of your interest in mushrooms. I thought it was really fascinating because I think a lot of people are in the same spot of saying like, hey, I don't really know what I want to do with my life. Let me follow some level of status quo or what's comfortable, and then discovering and activating what you like, which is a YouTube video about mushroom and mushroom farming. So really fascinating to hear that self-discovery of an interest and passion. Secondly, thanks so much for sharing about, I think, mushrooms and the entire mushroom industry. I did not know about portobello being a different version of the same mushroom as the white and brown mushrooms, but also talking about gourmet mushrooms and obviously truffles, kind of like a spectrum, but also talking about cold chain, the geographic centers of it coming from Malaysia or from China, as well as I think the consumer, psychology around buying local. I think that's a fascinating learning about mushrooms as a category. And then lastly, thanks so for sharing about farming as an industry. I think obviously a lot of people have this idealized version of what farming looks like, in New Zealand, for example, versus I think we're talking about the unit economics of what farming looks like at the vertical farm level, at a wide farm level, but also talking about it from a policy perspective, from a food security perspective. What are some of the constraints that you have once you take into account the cost of land, the cost of water, the cost of sunlight, the cost of air, and the cost of labor? So lots of different inputs that go into there. So thanks so much for sharing about the farming industry and the unique economics associated with it. On that note, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.